again, welcome back to Inde-Car on the 26th of August. Today's programme is a mix, actually. It's a tale of two very, very different parties, but it's a tale also of Inde-Car getting stuff wrong, which I frequently do. So I'm going to make a correction to something I mentioned in an earlier programme, but I'll deal with that in the later part of today's show. But first, let's talk about the first party in question. That's obviously the Labour Party. Many people, like myself, who are former, I think it's fair to say many Scots are former Labour voters. I was for many years a trade unionist and a Labour supporter before the SNP really had any sway over Scottish politics. And I converted to independence shortly after the Tony Blair government was elected and disappointed us in so many different ways. However, that's my own stance on the Labour Party. I no longer view them in the same way. But what's happened recently has disappointed even me compared to what I thought any Labour Party should do coming into office on the back of a catastrophic defeat by the Tory Party, where Labour swept into power with a massive landslide. But I think that the one thing that nobody expected from a Labour government was for them to cut the winter fuel allowance to people who needed it. Primarily and mostly this would be elderly people who are on a fixed income. And I suppose many other people on benefits who just don't have the money to pay spiralling energy bills. But that's not really the story here. The story here is the coincidence, if you want to characterise it that way, of the Labour government actually cutting this benefit, because it is a benefit, and helping out the most needy during the time of fuel poverty. But at just the moment that they also have decided to give Ofgem the green light to raise energy bills this winter, before we've even started paying for our heating and our lighting this winter. They've already allowed Ofgem, which is a government quango, I suppose you would say, a quasi-non-government organisation, but it is directed by the British government, have allowed Ofgem to basically give the energy companies a green light to profiteer some more. Now, they're already making gigantic profits. Now, the energy companies are saying that they're raising energy bills by 10% to reflect the cost of gas across Europe. Now, the cost of gas across Europe have actually fallen. So why do they need to increase them by 10%? And more to the point, why has the Labour Party decided to both cut the benefit to those who need it for these bills, whilst allowing the energy regulator to raise the energy price cap by 10%, which we all know that the big six energy suppliers are going to rush in and apply to the maximum? And I think the answer to that is that this is essentially a punitive measure by Labour. They're punishing those who they see as perhaps wealthy retired people who don't need this benefit. But at the same time, they're condemning those who do need it to fuel poverty that's even worse than before, where you have to make a choice between either heating your house or eating food. Now, that's a choice that nobody in a country as supposedly wealthy as the United Kingdom should ever have to face. And yet the Labour Party is forcing this upon us. To make things worse, the Labour Party has also just said, in fact, Keir Starmer has said, that things are going to get worse before they get better. Now, this to me is laughable. It's so ridiculous. It is as if Keir Starmer is the opposite of Tony Blair. Tony Blair swept in with the sound of a song saying that things could only get better. So Keir Starmer swept into power saying that things can only get worse under his leadership, something which any Labour politician worth his salt would never ever do, which means that Keir Starmer really is a Tory wearing a red rosette and pretending to be a socialist. He's nothing to do with the Labour Party. It's almost as if he has been shoehorned in by some magical process to lead a Labour Party which looks nothing like it used to do. It has stopped being a socialist party. It's stopped being the party of the workers. Now, to be fair, and I am trying to be fair here to what I think is a horrible Labour Party, They have raised the wages of public sector workers in England, but only because the public sector workers in England are paid less than they are in Scotland, particularly teachers, but also doctors and nurses who were threatening to strike. And of course, Sir Keir Starmer can't have a strike on his hands because that would make him look like a Labour Prime Minister. And he doesn't want to look like that. He wants to look like a Tory. Why he wants to look like a Tory? Well, it's anybody's guess. Maybe he really is a Tory and he's just pretending to be a Labour politician. Either way, this is not the Labour Party that we all used to know and recognise. This is something new. This is worse than Blairism by a long, long way. And I suspect any Labour voters who are still in existence in Scotland are going to be running for the exits and joining one of the pro-independence parties that are waiting in the wings to pick up such people. Now that brings me neatly to the second part of the show. Now, in the last few episodes, I've mentioned Peter Bell and his writings about a new Scottish or New Scotland Party, which according to Mr. Bell would be membership-led, entirely focused on independence, and wouldn't be deflected by anything else. Now, it's been pointed out to me by the leader of the Independence for Scotland Party, ISP, Colette Walker, that I forgot, and this is a glaring omission on my part, even mentioned that the ISP predates even ALBA in its creation. And the ISP is already a member-led organisation. It is not a top-down totalitarian regime like the SNP. It's membership-led. It's entirely focused on gaining independence. But not only that, it's also abstentionist. Now, those of you who know your history of politics will know that Sinn Féin, back in the days when they campaigned for seats at Westminster, would never take their seats if they won them. They would abstain. They would absent themselves, which basically meant that politicians, MPs elected to Sinn Féin at Westminster would actually not be paid because they wouldn't take their seats and swear an oath of allegiance to the United Kingdom. Colette Walker's party has said it will do the same. It will not take any seats it wins down in London. Now, another thing I think is worth pointing out, and something which I haven't said and should have said, is that the ISP has had some successes recently, most notably in a by-election recently where they ran the SNP a close second. Now, that is over and above the Labour Party, the Tories, the Liberal Democrats, and I think even Reform, which has been ominously gaining traction in Scotland recently. So the ISP, which predates even ALBA, was already there fighting for independence, was already a member-led organisation, and still is to this day. It's also, I think, worth pointing out that ISP, not only have they been fighting for independence, but they've also been fighting to maintain women's sex-based rights. Now, what I'm talking about here was the Gender Recognition Reform Act, so clumsily forced through by the SNP government in Holyrood recently, against the wishes, it seems, of a majority of the population. Remember that in forcing through the Gender Recognition Reform Act, they consigned being a woman to some kind of marginal identity, which was nebulous to say the very least. So women suddenly became secondary to trans people, to people of mixed gender, and all the rest of it. Now, the ISP has fought since its inception to ensure that women's sex-based rights remain intact, that women remain described as women. Women are those who are born equipped with the reproductive organs to produce children. I mean, that's a given. We all know this. And I don't have any problem with actually saying that. As far as people who are transgender are concerned, well, I wish them well. They still have the right that they always had, to have a certificate issued to them if they wish to readjust their gender to the opposite gender of what they originally are. All that's required is a little bit of medical proof. Now, that's not too strong a thing to ask for. Body dysmorphia is a recognised condition, those who feel they're born into the wrong sex. And asking for proof that that is how you feel, and medical proof, I don't think is a stretch. So as far as it goes, the ISP is already there. It's been there Even before Alba formed, before Alex Salmond even took charge of Alba, the ISP was already in there swinging for independence, and it still is. And it's running a close second to the SNP in a by-election, for goodness sake. So quite apart from Peter Bell's wish list of things that his new Scottish party would like to be, the fact is that this already exists in the form of Colette Walker's party, the ISP. And I think it's high time I apologise to Colette for omitting to publish these facts. Anyway, that's it from Inde-Car today. I hope you've enjoyed today's programme. But remember, the Labour Party is no longer the Labour Party. The Labour Party is now a red-rosetted Tory party, which is just as extreme and just as far right as its predecessor, and is going to go on punishing people as long as it needs to follow Tory doctrine, which is baffling to me why they've decided to go down this route. And the ISP, for its part, is going to be there at the next general election in Holyrood, and it will be interesting to see how they get on there, given their recent successes in by-election. So anyway, that's it from Inde-Car today. I hope you've enjoyed the programme, and you'll tune in again the next time I publish another show. In the meantime, I'd like to thank everyone who's made recent donations, one in particular who is going to remain nameless because I don't have permission to publish his name, who made a huge donation of £100 to Inde-Car recently. So thank you very, very much for that massive donation. That's given me a huge shot in the arm in terms of how many programmes I can now produce. So keep the faith, and I'll see you later on in the week. Bye-bye for now.